Story 1. When I was 13, my parents finally started trusting me enough to leave me home alone for a night. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a Friday evening where they had dinner plans with friends and didn't want to bring a kid along. We lived in this quiet, almost boring town in Oregon. Clean streets, good neighbors, barely any crime. The kind of place where people don't lock their doors during the day. I'd lived in that same house my whole life, and nothing bad had ever happened. So when they told me they'd be out from 6 to maybe midnight and left me with $20 and a list of emergency numbers, I wasn't nervous at all. I was excited. I had the whole house to myself. Fr Edom. I remember watching the sun set from the living room, controller in hand, playing some older racing game on my PS2. No homework, no chores, no siblings. Just me, some snacks, and whatever I wanted to watch or play. Around 7:30, I decided I was hungry and ordered a pizza from Milo's Pizza, the place a few blocks down. We used to get food from there all the time. My parents even knew the owner, so it felt safe. I called in, placed the order for a large pepperoni, and they said it'd be about 30 minutes. That gave me enough time to clean up a bit and dig out the $20 bill my mom had left on the counter, along with a note that said, "Tip at least $3. I remember laughing at that. It was such a mom thing to write. Around 8:10, the doorbell rang. I jumped up, excited like any kid would be. I ran downstairs with the money in hand, already imagining the hot box of cheesy goodness. When I opened the door, the man standing there wasn't someone I recognized from previous deliveries. He looked like he was in his 30s, maybe older. Long, scraggly beard, glasses, and a black trucker hat pulled low. His clothes looked a bit worn out, and he didn't smile. Not once. Just handed me the pizza box, looked me up and down in this slow, kind of unsettling way, and started counting out change. That's when he asked it. "You home alone?" His voice wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't friendly either. Just flat, dry, like he was asking for the time. But it hit me weird. Something in my chest tensed. I knew my parents had always told me to never tell strangers I was alone, so I hesitated, and then mumbled something like, "No, my dad's upstairs," which, thinking back, was a dumb answer. If someone was upstairs, why would a kid be answering the door alone? He looked past me into the hallway like he was trying to see if anyone else was inside. Just stared for a second too long before handing over the change without another word. I thanked him, shut the door, and locked it. I didn't think much of it right then. I set the pizza box on the counter and served myself a few slices, then wrapped the rest in foil like my mom always told me to and put them in the fridge. I went back upstairs, thinking that was the end of it. Just a weird guy and a good pizza. I turned on a different game and settled back in. Maybe 2 hours passed. I remember checking the time because I was wondering when my parents would be back. It was just after 10 o'clock. That's when I heard the doorbell again. At first, I thought, obviously .it was my parents. Maybe they forgot their keys. I ran downstairs, smiling, and called out through the door. "Mom? Dad?" But then came the voice. A man's voice I didn't recognize. "Hey, I need help." It was calm. Too calm. Like someone who didn't really sound desperate, just patient. I froze. I didn't answer right away. Then I asked, "Who is this?" He repeated, "I just need to use a phone. That's all, no name, no knocking. Just that voice." I didn't look through the window. I was too afraid of what I'd see. Something about it felt off. I couldn't explain why, but every part of me was telling me not to open the door. So I backed up the stairs slowly, heart racing, and tried not to make a sound. And that's when I heard the knock. One single knock. Not hard, not frantic, just a slow, steady knock. And then he said something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Wait, please. I see you." I didn't respond. I just stood there, halfway up the stairs, frozen in place. My heart was thudding so loudly I thought he might hear it through the door. He had seen me. I knew it wasn't just a guess or a bluff. He was standing close enough to the door to see through the small, decorative window at the top. And now, he knew I was home, and I was alone. I backed up the stairs one step at a time, trying to stay out of his view. I didn't want to turn my back on the door, but I knew I had to get to a phone. The only one upstairs was in my parents' room. I rushed in and immediately called my mom's cell. She picked up after a couple of rings. Her voice relaxed at first, probably sipping wine with her friends. But the second I told her what was going on, her tone changed. She asked if I'd spoken to the man. I said yes. She asked if I'd told him I was alone. I hesitated, then told her the truth. Not directly, but enough that he probably figured it out. I told her he was still out there, ringing the bell and knocking. She told me not to leave the room, to keep the lights off, and to lock the bedroom door. She said she'd call the police right away. I sat on the floor, clutching the phone like it was the only thing keeping me safe. My mom stayed on the line with me the whole time while she used my dad's phone to talk to 911. She said they'd already left the restaurant and were heading home. It was a warm summer night, and we had left some windows cracked open to let air in. That's when I heard it. A sound from outside. A small metal squeak. I recognized it immediately. The side gate. It made a very distinct sound when it opened, and that sound was now coming from the backyard. I whispered it to my mom. He's going around the house. She told me to stay quiet, to not move, and not to speak. I crouched by the bed, my whole body tense. Then came another sound. A softer one, like the sliding door in the den being opened. That one didn't squeak. It was nearly silent. I whispered again. What if he gets in? My mom didn't answer at first. Then she said, "Don't talk. Just stay low. Stay hidden." And so I did. I turned off the lamp in the room and slid under the bed. I felt stupid doing it, but I didn't know what else to do. The house felt too big all of a sudden, like the shadows were stretching out around me. Then I heard the unmistakable creak of a floorboard downstairs. Someone was inside. My blood went cold. I barely breathed. I whispered, "He's in the house," and I heard my mom gasp through the phone. She started yelling something, probably to the police on the other end. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell she was panicking now too. She told me to stay under the bed and not make a sound. I could hear footsteps below, slow, deliberate, like someone walking through the living room, pausing, then moving again. I stared at the bottom of the bedroom door, watching for any movement, any shadows. The steps moved to the stairs. I heard each one creak as the weight shifted up. They weren't rushed. He wasn't in a hurry. He was searching. He walked past my sister's room, then mine. Then he reached the hallway outside my parents' room. The doorknob rattled, softly at first, then again, harder. He tried to open it a few times, but it was locked. Then came the part that scared me most. He didn't say anything, not a word. He just knocked once, then stood there. I could hear him breathing. I didn't dare move. The knob turned again, then silence, a long pause. Finally, I heard the footsteps again, retreating down the hall, down the stairs, fading into the lower part of the house. I didn't move, didn't even whisper. My mom whispered updates. Police were 2 minutes away, then 1. I just kept watching that door. Then, suddenly, there were loud, heavy footsteps. A different sound, stronger. Someone shouted my name. A man's voice. "Lena? It's the police." I still didn't move until my mom said I could answer. I crawled out and unlocked the door. 2 officers were there. They looked serious but calm. They checked the room, then walked me downstairs. 2 more officers were down there. They told me the back sliding door was wide open and the screen had been cut. I told them everything. About the pizza guy. About what he asked me. One officer nodded and said they'd follow up. When my parents got home, they were pale and shaken. They didn't stop hugging me for 5 minutes straight. We never heard back from the police about it. Never really got answers. But my parents never ordered from Milo's again. And they didn't leave me home alone for a long, long time after that top of form. Story 2. When I was 17, my parents moved us from a busy suburb in California to a remote house up in the forests of Colorado. They had just retired and wanted peace, space, and fresh air. The house they built was huge. 2 stories, a finished basement, a home gym, and even a theater room. It sat on several acres of wooded land with no neighbors in sight. The nearest grocery store was a 40-minute drive. At first, I thought it was kind of cool. Quiet. Isolated. I could blast music or stay up all night without bothering anyone. But something about the silence up there got to me. The air was too still. The nights were too dark. You couldn't see past the tree line. And it always felt like something might be just beyond the shadows. I tried to shake it off. I was just adjusting, I told myself. I was dating this girl named Brooke at the time. She still lived in town and would come over sometimes when my parents were out. One Friday night, they went out for dinner in the city and said they wouldn't be home until late. I invited Brooke over, and we decided to hang out in the basement theater room and watch a movie. I remember we picked Gladiator. I even cracked open a beer, figuring no one would notice. The theater room was cool. Dark walls, surround sound, big screen. Everything felt normal, but halfway through the movie, I started feeling off. Like my brain couldn't explain what my body was sensing. My chest tightened, and my eyes kept drifting to the large window at the back of the room. It looked out into the woods, and at night it was just blackness. The glass reflected the movie, but behind it, nothing. Just void. I tried to ignore it. Brooke was sitting next to me, totally into the movie. We were leaning into each other, and at one point she kissed me, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking I saw something shift in the window's reflection. Not movement, exactly. Just something wrong. Eventually the movie ended. I walked her upstairs, we hugged goodbye, and I watched her drive off. The gravel crunched under her tires, and then silence again. Just me and the woods. I turned to go back inside and realized I had left the lights on in the basement. I sighed and headed back down. First, I turned off the theater room lights. The reflection in the window disappeared, and now I was staring into pure black. I froze. There, just beyond the glass, was a man. His face was pale, like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His hair was long and tangled, his clothes filthy and sagging. But what stopped me cold was the smile. Huge, unnatural, stretched, way too wide. And in his hand, he was holding a knife. Not up or threatening, just lightly tapping the blade against the glass. Over and over. Tap, tap, tap. I stood still, not breathing, thinking maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe my brain was tired, or the shadows were playing tricks. But the tapping didn't stop. He tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. I backed away slowly, not turning my back. I slipped into the bar room next door and flicked off the lights there too. That room had a sliding glass door, also facing the woods. And when the lights went out, I saw him again. He had moved. Calmly. Silently. He was now standing at the sliding door, knife still in hand, still smiling. Less than a foot of glass separated us. I could see the fog of his breath on the window. He didn't try to get in. He didn't pound or shout. He just stared. That made it worse. I backed up, turned, and went upstairs as fast as I could. I didn't run. I didn't want him to know I was scared. But my legs were shaking. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard the front door open. It was my parents. They had perfect timing. I told them everything in a rush. What I saw, what he looked like, the knife. My mom went pale. My dad didn't say a word. He went straight to the gun safe, pulled out his rifle, and walked outside. I stayed at the window, watching him sweep the property, but the man was gone. We called the police. They found nothing. No footprints, no broken glass, no sign anyone had been there. But I knew what I saw, and I knew I hadn't imagined that smile. After that night, things didn't go back to normal. My parents tried to act like it was a one-time thing, maybe someone passing through, or a weird dream I'd convinced myself was real. But I knew what I saw, and what scared me most was how calm he had been. Not angry, not wild, just patient, watching. A few weeks passed. Then winter came early. Heavy snow blanketed the property, covering the trees, the hills, and every inch of the yard. It was quiet, almost too quiet. My parents had to go out of town for 3 days to help my aunt with some surgery prep. I was 17, so they figured I'd be okay. We had a big Rottweiler named Shadow. He was a sweetheart to us, but super alert. He never barked unless he meant it. Before they left, my dad gave me a shotgun to keep in the bedroom. Just in case, he said, but I could tell he was still thinking about that night too. The first night alone, everything was still. I stayed in my room, played some music, and tried to act normal. But around midnight, Shadow stood up at the foot of my bed. His ears perked up. His body stiffened. Then he growled, low and slow. He walked to the door and stared at it, then barked DEF, sharp barks that echoed down the hallway. He only did that when something was outside. My heart started pounding. I didn't move. I just sat there and listened. That's when I heard it. Crunch, crunch, slow, heavy footsteps in the snow. They weren't animal sounds. They were rhythmic, human. I turned off the lights and sat quietly. Shadow stayed by the door, growling. Then came a knock. Not loud, not frantic, just deliberate. Like the person knew I was on the other side, listening. I didn't answer, I didn't move. I sat there until the barking stopped and everything went quiet again. I barely slept that night. In the morning, I walked outside, shotgun in hand, and that's when I saw them. Footprints, clear as day in the snow. They circled the entire house. I followed them window by window, and sure enough, they stopped at each one. Like someone had been checking, looking inside, watching. They even stopped at the small bathroom window on the second floor. That made no sense. I followed the prints farther into the woods. At first they were straight, leading away from the house. But then they started to zigzag, loop, double back, like whoever made them was trying to lose a trail. Something in me said stop, so I turned around and went back inside. That night, it happened again. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to that same tapping sound, soft metal on glass, the same rhythm I'd heard weeks earlier. I got up and opened the sliding door onto the second-story deck. I brought the shotgun with me. The backyard was pitch black, but we had fog lights that lit up the tree line. I flipped them on, and there he was. Same man, same filthy clothes, same smile, standing just beyond the light, holding the knife, just watching me. He didn't move. He didn't run. He didn't even blink. I raised the shotgun and shouted, "Leave now, or I'll shoot." Nothing, just that grin. I fired a warning shot into the air. He flinched a little, but didn't leave. He slowly stepped backward into the woods, never turning his back, never dropping that creepy stare. That's when I made a decision. I ran downstairs, flung open the back door, and let Shadow out. He bolted into the trees like a missile, barking louder than I'd ever heard. We had an invisible fence set up, so I knew he wouldn't go far, but I hoped he scared the guy off. And maybe he did, because after that night, I never saw him again. But I'll be honest, I still sleep with the blinds closed. And sometimes, even now, I wake up in the middle of the night and swear I hear tapping, just once, then silence. Story 3. Last spring, during our college break, 5 of my closest friends and I decided to rent a cabin in the mountains of West Virginia. We just wanted a quiet place to relax, drink a little, laugh a lot, and get away from the pressure of classes and constant notifications. The cabin looked amazing online. 2 stories, big windows, a wraparound porch, and it was listed as being on private land near a small lake. It was cheap for the size, and the pictures made it seem cozy, but things didn't feel right the moment we arrived. The drive took forever, and our GPS had cut out almost an hour before we reached the property. The road turned to gravel, then dirt, and the forest got thicker the deeper we went. When we finally pulled up to the cabin, the vibe shifted. It didn't look like the photos. It was older, weather-beaten, and parts of it looked like no one had touched them in years. A couple of shutters hung loose, the porch creaked with every step, and there was this faint smell, like old wood and something else, something sour, but we shrugged it off. We were 6 college kids. Me, Cole, Ethan, Rachel, Liz, and James. We joked about how it was the perfect setup for a horror movie and got on with our night. We unpacked, picked rooms, and started drinking by 7 p.m. We grilled out on the porch, played loud music from a speaker, and by the time the sun set, we had all relaxed. The trees around the cabin were thick, so thick that once it got dark, it felt like the whole forest swallowed the light. The porch light barely reached 10 feet out. I remember stepping outside to get some air and realizing how silent it was. No wind, no bugs, no owls, just nothing. We eventually moved inside, kept drinking, and played some cards. Around 2 a.m., we all crashed. I had taken the downstairs room next to the kitchen. It was small but had a bed and a window that looked out into the woods. I closed the curtain and knocked out fast. I don't know what woke me, but I shot up in bed sometime after 4 a.m. My chest was tight like I'd had a nightmare, but I couldn't remember any of it. I just had this cold, anxious feeling in my gut. I sat still, listening. That's when I heard the sound. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was the heater, but it didn't repeat like a mechanical rhythm. It was slower, more intentional. I turned my head to the window. That's when I saw him. A man, standing right at the glass. His face was almost pressed to it. Pale skin, wild, messy hair. No shirt. His mouth was slightly open like he was breathing through it, and his eyes, they were wide, unblinking. He just stood there, tapping his fingers slowly against the window. I couldn't move. My body just froze. I don't know how long I stared, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. His expression didn't change. He didn't try to open the window or bang or scream. He just watched me, like he knew I was too scared to do anything. Then the tapping got a little faster. That broke the trance. I whispered to Cole, who had taken the couch just outside my door. "Cole," I said again a little louder. He mumbled something half asleep, and I just pointed toward the window. He sat up, looked over, and I'll never forget the way his face changed. 1 second sleepy, the next wide-eyed and pale. He jumped up, knocking over the little coffee table. The crash must have scared the guy off, because by the time Cole turned on the porch light and ran outside, he was gone. The others woke up from the noise. Liz and Rachel were panicking. Ethan grabbed a bat he'd brought for fun and checked around the house. We didn't see anyone. We pushed the couch against the front door, double-checked all the locks, and sat in the living room together until morning. No one really talked. We were all just trying to process what happened. But I couldn't stop thinking about his face. How close it was. How he didn't blink. He looked at me like he had all the time in the world. We should have left that morning. After seeing that guy's face just inches from the glass, after finding the footprints circling the cabin, bare feet, in the cold dirt. We should have packed up and gone. But we didn't. We were 6 dumb college kids who didn't want to waste the rest of our weekend. Everyone had a theory. Rachel thought it was some drunk local. Ethan said it might have been a hunter who got lost. Liz didn't say much, but I could tell she was scared. Cole tried to play it off like it was nothing, but he kept checking the windows every 10 minutes. I told them what I saw, how the man didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there staring like he knew I'd freeze. We agreed to be more careful. We kept the curtains shut and locked every window and door. We moved a big dresser in front of the back door and pushed a coffee table against the front. We figured that was enough. That night, we tried to keep things normal. Played music, grilled again, tried to bring the energy back up, but it wasn't the same. Everyone was distracted. Conversations trailed off. We all kept glancing at the tree line like it might reach out and grab us. Jess didn't drink at all that night. She just sat by the fire pit and stared into the dark. Around 1 in the morning, we went back inside. Everyone did a final sweep of the locks. I slept on the floor in the living room with Cole. James and Ethan were upstairs, and the girls shared the big bedroom on the other side of the house. I was just starting to doze off when I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I opened my eyes and saw Cole already sitting up. We looked at each other. No one said a word. The steps were coming from the kitchen. Then Cole pointed. Someone was standing there. A man. The same one. This time, he was inside the house. He was naked. His back was toward us, and it was covered in long red scratches, like claw marks. He stood in front of the fridge, swaying gently like he was trying to remember what it was. He didn't move fast. He didn't make a sound, just that slow, eerie rocking. Cole motioned for me to stay down. He backed up, quietly. I watched him grab the broken chair leg we'd been using as a makeshift bat. I slowly reached for my pocket knife. Jess came out of her room and saw him too. Her face went white. She didn't scream. None of us did. We were too scared. I don't know why, but turning on the light felt like the right move. I hit the switch, and the room flooded with light. The man was gone. Vanished. The back door was wide open. No broken glass. No forced entry. Just open like someone had let him in. We didn't talk. We didn't argue. We packed. Phones, wallets, keys. No one cared about the food or the speakers or the coolers we brought. We threw everything in the car and drove until we had a cell signal. When we reached a gas station an hour later, we called the sheriff. A deputy met us at a diner just off the highway. He didn't seem surprised. He asked if anyone was hurt, then nodded when we described the man. He said there had been some issues with squatters in that area. People living off the grid, maybe not mentally stable. We tried to explain that this wasn't just a squatter. This man had watched us, had come back twice, and he had gotten inside without breaking anything. The deputy just nodded again and said he'd file a report. When we mentioned the cabin's owner, his expression changed, like he recognized the name, but he didn't say anything. A few days later, the listing for the cabin disappeared from every rental site, completely wiped. No photos, no contact info, nothing. We never heard from the owner, never got a refund. We never even got a call back. I don't think any of us have returned to West Virginia since. Sometimes I wake up at night and remember that man's face. Not angry, not sad. Just watching like he was waiting for something. And I still wonder what would have happened if we hadn't turned on that light.